we have a video body cam from a police officer. The officer goes into a Goodwill store, and he's saying, "Look, I'm dealing with this homeless lady that's outside. She's barefoot. She has no shoes or anything. Can I get some shoes for her to be able to wear? Just doesn't have to be anything fancy." And they call the manager over. The manager talks with the officer and everything, and the cop's telling him like, "Hey, dealing with this homeless lady. I'd like to be able to give her some shoes." And essentially, the manager says, "Nah, I can't help you with that, man. We're not allowed to do that. Can't do that." So eventually, the officer's like, "Okay, can I buy some?" And they said, "Sure, yeah, you can buy whatever you want." And the guy ends up having to spend his own money. The officer spends his own money to be able to buy some shoes, maybe some sandals or flip-flops, something for this woman to be able to wear. And, look, I fully understand the corporate side of things. But the reality is, this is Goodwill. I mean, what are we talking about? $6 pair of shoes. And could Goodwill not have, isn't this what you're there for?
Right. And again, Goodwill didn't spend a dime on any of this stuff.
Right.
This is free stuff for them. They get free stuff, and then they mark the prices up for people to go in there and buy. Yeah. And, I watch these videos on, TikTok and X, and these resellers go into these places and, buy the stuff. And, part of me is like, dude, man, they're going there and buying this, and they can flip it online for, they buy it for $8 and they can flip it for $70, whatever it is, and, I'm like, dude, people could use that stuff. But then you see videos like this and you're like, man, who cares? Buy all the stuff up, because this is absolutely ridiculous. This is why you should never donate to a company like Goodwill. Yeah, because clearly they don't have goodwill. I mean, take that out of your name. Call it a resale shop. Call it whatever you want. But there's zero goodwill going on here. You paid $0 for those shoes, and I understand you got to pay employees and do all this stuff. But if you want to go back and look and see how much the CEO or the whoever is the lead of Goodwill and see what their annual salary is. Yeah. And they're making this money off of donations from unsuspecting people who think, oh, this is going to a good place. This is going to a good place. You go in some of these and the prices on those things are almost as worse as retail. You go in and you're like, dude, isn't this stuff supposed to be cheap? That's why you need to really reconsider on where you donate your stuff. I'm not going to tell anyone what to do. Do whatever you want to do. Whatever, right? Yeah. But you're better. And I have a place here that's in my hometown here, and everything is free. Now they've had to curb it because, again, of resellers and things like that. They go in there with just grocery bags and shopping bags just full of stuff. I mean, just ignorance. Yeah. But everything in there is free. And that's how they survive. They survive off of donations. They survive off of, people bringing in stuff. But you need something, you go in there and you get it and you take it. That's a charity, or that's a place that you can look to donate. How dare you be I'm sorry, we can't give away a pair of shoes that someone gave to us. Right.
Well, and I'll tell you something else. Now, I want to be very careful when I say this, because I'm getting ready to shed some light on this. But before I do that, I want to be clear. We are not blaming corporate at Goodwill or anything else. Because there's every possibility that if the CEO of Goodwill happened to be in the store that day, that he would be like, what are you talking about? Of course, obviously, give this officer the shoes. We want to help this woman, right? Let's assume that that's the case. However, the most recent compensation package that I have was from 2022. Stephen C. Preston, the CEO of Goodwill in 2022, made $650,989. David Eagles, the COO, made almost $366,000. Oni Crawley, the chief marketing officer, made $365,000. The chief mission officer made $340,000. The chief mission and partnership officer made $305,000. The chief learning and talent officer made $275,000. The chief information and technology officer made $275,000. The chief legal officer and general counsel made $263,000. The VP of donated goods made $261,000. The VP of quality foundations made $243,000. The senior consultant made $206,000. The VP of government affairs made $202,000, and the chief financial officer made $160,000.
Which again,
that's a lot of money. It's millions at that point that have been paid out to the executive team of Goodwill.
Right. Now, those compensations don't compare to like a Fortune 500 salary. Sure. But again, those Fortune 500 companies aren't getting their product for free.
Right. Yes. That's right. Goodwill manufactures nothing. They're not making this stuff.
No, it's all based on people donating their unused stuff, like the stuff they don't want anymore. That's how they all make their money. So for the guy to be making $600,000, you're making $600,000 off of people giving away stuff that you then in turn resell to other people. It's insane when you think about it. I'm not saying they don't deserve to make a salary, right? I mean, I'm sure, like that's their job, right? Make a salary. It's insane to me that they would make that kind of money off of, like, if people just decided tomorrow we're boycotting Goodwill, we're no longer ever, they don't have a business. They don't have a model, right?
I got something way bigger. I just found this. Goodwill is not a single organization. It's made up of a multitude of organizations, typically by state. So you'll have Goodwill of Missouri, Goodwill of Florida, Goodwill of California. I accidentally just gave you individual stuff.
Oh, my.
There's a CEO of the Goodwill of Colorado, Carla Grazier. She made $518,000 last year. The CEO of Goodwill Retail Services made $836,000 last year. The executive vice president of Goodwill of Missouri made $383,000. The CEO made $370,000. The CEO, president and CEO of Goodwill of Houston made $905,000 last year. That's just Houston. Goodwill of North Georgia, president and CEO, $887,000. Goodwill of Southern California, president and CEO, made $750,000. Goodwill of Northwest Washington, president and CEO, $473,000. I mean, I could just go on and on and on. Goodwill Industries of Central Arizona, just Central Arizona, the president and CEO made over $800,000 last year.
Unbelievable.
So yeah, I was totally mistaken. I told you the information from a guy who runs a single state versus every one of these states, and not even sometimes the whole state. It could just be central, like this part or Houston alone. It's $600,000, $800,000 for most of these folks. That's Goodwill.
They're driving, the nicest cars, living in the biggest houses, and it's all based on someone giving stuff to them for free.
Yeah.
That they're then turning around and selling to people.
Yeah.
And look, none of their stores are nice, right? I mean, you ever been inside of a Goodwill? Yeah. They all have a dingy smell, like the ceiling's leaking. Like it's not like they put that money into like upgrades of their places. They just
rent a place in a strip mall, the cheapest thing they can find. And
dude, it's disgusting. It's sickening, man. I'm sure they've done well, and I'm sure they've done good for people out there. And I don't diminish anyone that shops at a Goodwill or anything like that. I mean, you do what you got to do for your family. It's just, the fact that it wasn't like the officer coming in here like, hey, I've got, 600 people outside that need free clothing. Do you think you can help? It was,
yes,
I got one lady who's homeless who doesn't have shoes on her feet. It's, whatever time of the year it is, it doesn't matter. She's walking around with no shoes. Can you spare a pair of shoes? You don't have to set a precedent, right? You don't have to, yeah, man, you've been in here. We know you because the officer, if you, again, the audio quality is not great. So it's,
right.
Reason we didn't play it, but he knew the guy like, oh yeah, I know you from here. And then like one guy was like, oh, is it this lady? Or I think it was one of the ladies in there. Like, oh, is it that woman? No, it's not. It's
right.
I'm telling you what this is. Right. So they knew the officer, they knew of the lady, or at least the lady they thought it was. And
there was no doubt this was real.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got a paragraph before we move on. I'm going to read this to you. This will tell you everything you need to know about Goodwill. Goodwill as a total organization is divided into 155 autonomous organizations, most of whom appear to never spend as much as they raise. As such, each organization has executive compensation, with the most senior executives receiving anywhere from $370,000 to $900,000 per year salary, an average of $650,000 a year salary. It's important to point that out, because if you look only at management kind of oversight overall, if 155 organizations pay an average president $650,000 a year, then Goodwill is spending approximately $100 million a year to compensate 155 employees. Can you imagine this? So Goodwill, if they're saying the average executive makes $650,000, they have 155 organizations, that would be, if there's only one CEO or president, only one that makes $650,000 a year, times 155 of those, that's $100 million a year that Goodwill is paying out in executive leadership to CEOs of individual aspects of Goodwill. What do you think Goodwill could do with an extra $100 million a year? It's got to be something good that they could come up with, right?
You would think. You would think that would supply a lot of food banks with a lot of food for a lot of months, wouldn't you think?
Got to think so. $100 million a year to pay 155 employees at Goodwill. Crazy.
Again, they don't have any tangible products that they make or do. No. It is all based on the goodwill of people.
Yeah. And I've donated to Goodwill before. Like, I absolutely have donated to Goodwill several times. So, I mean, I'm very familiar with Goodwill, and but
people say, I'm sure the word is, the thing we'll get is, you get a tax break on it. I'm going to guess 5% of the people that donate request a receipt for tax donations. And what do you think the tax donations like? You're not donating a Maserati.
Right. Like, you're getting $20 or something, for a trash bag full of clothes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. In which, when you do your taxes, they're going to be like, yeah, you still qualify for the standardized donations, right? I mean, it's not like, you donated $5,000 worth of clothes. Here's $5,000 back on your taxes, right? No, it's pennies on the dollar that you're getting back, if that. So
we will do a more thorough investigative report at some point on Goodwill, because this has piqued my interest. So we'll do a little deeper dive on some of this, because I think there's something interesting that could be uncovered here.